Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you again for another time to be together with Workspace Spark. Today we have Mori Taheripour, and I'm telling you, this book is a book I did not know I needed. Anytime we have an author coming on for our subscribers for Workspace Spark, I make sure I get the book. I make sure I read it first. And when I tell you, I couldn't put this book down. I cannot wait to pass on to my mentee because negotiation is something I don't think, not naked gender based, that a lot of women talk about. Our founder heard you at an event and said you are phenomenal. So thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yes, yes. A book I did not think I needed, but cannot wait to deep dive for our subscribers today.
Thank you. Very excited.
Awesome. So tell us about yourself.
So I teach at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I teach negotiations for the Legal Studies and Business Ethics department. So I teach at all levels. I teach continuously the undergrads, MBAs I've taught, and then the executive MBAs. And so, just a variety of ages and experiences and where they are at the point of their life when I come into contact with them. So that's really so joyous for me, actually, because you see so many different people at so many parts of their journey. Outside of Wharton, though, is where I do most of my teaching. I do where I actually met your founder, but I teach primarily for Goldman Sachs's 10,000 small business programs, and I teach for them across the country. So at this point in 12 regions and growing. And again, talk about diversity of students and audience. It's incredible because it's all these different, from Detroit to Chicago to Des Moines, Iowa to Manchester, New Hampshire, and New Orleans and New York. I mean, I could go on, but again, just to have so many different people that you reach and you touch and you interact with. So I learn as much from my students as I do and sort of giving them back. So it's very much a mutual sort of sense of learning and growing together. I do a lot of because of my book, I do a tremendous amount of speaking engagements and on the road the majority of my time. So I would say probably 95% of my life is on a train, a plane, an automobile somewhere. And throughout my career, I've done a lot of work in sports as well. So I've sort of ran this parallel path. I don't do necessarily any negotiations work in sports so much as I do education and training. I do a lot of work with professional development for athletes, what we call athlete engagement or player engagement. And I do a lot of DEI work in sports as well. So, when you see women on the sidelines in non-traditional roles in NFL games these days, that's been a program I've been involved with since day one. A good part of my career has actually been spent in diversity, equity, inclusion, and it's sort of come full circle. So a little, I tell you more, but I don't really like hearing about myself so much. So we'll dive into the rest of the questions. How's that?
Yes, awesome. Now, I didn't read your bio. Everyone who is listening, please, you do not know what rock star we have on this call. And I just love that you do have parallel things. I think that also speaks to our lives, right? We're not one thing. We have so
Mhm.
many different things, and how our careers and things intersect, I think has been amazing. So I love it.
Thank you. I should say one thing for your audience, though. The majority of my life has been spent being an entrepreneur. So I started and I still am an entrepreneur at a very, very young age. So I say that to say that's why I think I can run parallel paths. Entrepreneurs are putting out fires and sweeping floors and putting out memos and meeting with clients, all of the above, right? So all the things. So yeah, it's I wouldn't choose any other path.
I love it. Well, speaking of that, so one of the things that stood out to me, there's so many, I have so many highlights, but in the first part of the book, it talked about self awareness. A quote that stood out to me is, "You must bring the best version of yourself to get the best deal." Self awareness to me, when I think about negotiation, is not a word I would have connected with
Right.
negotiation. So when I saw that in the book, it stood out. Can we talk a little bit about self awareness and why that is important in negotiations?
Yeah, I think it sort of starts off with why I even wrote the book in the first place. There's a lot of myths out there about negotiations and successful negotiators. Um, And many of sort of the traits are very masculine. I'm not talking male, man, woman, but I'm just saying more sort of masculine traits. And what we see in movies and just society at large are people who are very sort of in your face, aggressive, contentious. And, I see so many people, like I said, that my audience is so diverse that many don't find themselves in what they have seen modeled for them. And as a result, a lot of people sort of count themselves out. And so they think that to be successful, they have to be something else. And the truth is that and I believe this, and I've seen this sort of happen, both backfiring on people when they're not totally themselves, and then finding success and being completely themselves, right? Their most authentic selves. And the difference is when we are our authentic self, when we're genuine, right? Yeah. We are not memorizing a script. We're showing up incredibly present because we've sort of given ourselves permission to show up that way. We are, I think, much more emotionally present and emotionally intelligent because, again, we're not, what am I supposed to be? What did I read in that book on page 76? What am I supposed to say? You are, at a certain stage in our life, our gut instinct is actually pretty sharp. We have experience that feeds us. When we're our authentic selves, we better understand our wants and our needs. And I think that we are just in a lot of ways just freer and not stuck to something we're supposed to be or we think we're supposed to be or stuck to a script of some sort. So the conversation is more genuine, it's more connected, and it's more authentic. And that's why I think to be yourself, to be your authentic self is really important in achieving success in negotiations.
Yes, totally agree. Again, once I saw it, I understood, but I would have never put self-awareness in with the same sentence as negotiations, but how important that is.
Oh, yeah. And
Now,
you're also one more thing. You're also much more aware of your own emotions as well. And that's what I mean by being emotionally intelligent, right? So when you're not in that moment, because like I said, you're chasing this whole script, you don't know when you're getting a little bit more angry, or you don't know if somebody sort of made you sort of become more defensive, right? Because you're not completely there. So the emotionality part of it is also really important is when we're not present because we're trying to have some pretend, right? We're not as sharp in what we're picking up.
Yeah, especially when you're early in your career, you're like trying to figure out who you are in that career.
Right.
And, I remember when I first started, someone pulled me aside and said, there's no emotion in business. And, I've been entrepreneur, I've been in corporate, and my emotion shows up in business. And I just wish someone would have said that to me when I was younger. It took me a little time to figure that out. Now, a lot of our subscribers, they're, wanting promotions, looking for higher salaries. How does self-awareness show up in negotiation in like a higher salary or promotion?
Um, I hope that with self-awareness comes also a better understanding of our value, right? Sort of that self-narrative, that sort of inner voice that so often fails us, right? Those of us who struggle with a sort of a lack of self-esteem or the questioning of our own worth and value, that demoralizes us, right? And it decreases our self-confidence. And I think these things are so important because when I talk about sort of imposter syndrome in class, especially at the beginning of the class, people are like, what does that have to do with negotiations? It has everything to do with negotiations because until you can understand and honor your own value, then we don't allow ourselves to want more, right? Our goals resemble and are sort of in line with how we see ourselves, right? So if our value is diminished in our own mind, then we are okay with just enough, right? Or, that's good enough. Or, I'm not really supposed to ask for more. And so you're questioning your worth and your value. Thus, your goals reflect that, right? They're lesser than. And then what you ask for is always reflective of the goals that you've set out for yourselves. So, and nobody's going to give you more than what you've asked for. I mean, that's generally not how life goes, right? So, I think that whether it's salary, whether it's your marriage, whether it's getting a promotion of some sort, whether you're an acquisition target in a company and you're an entrepreneur, the lesser of or the sort of the more diminished your image of yourself is, your understanding of yourself is, then the basically the outcomes of the negotiations are going to reflect just that. So it's so important to first change that narrative, right? It's so important to look in the mirror and truly believe in yourself and quiet those voices. And really, once you do that, once you practice that sort of emotional hygiene, then I think that's the road to success. And I fundamentally believe that that's the foundation of success in negotiations.